I'm Justin Lamb. This is A Walk in Time, and we're here today with Miss Agnes Nimmo of the Olive Community. Miss Agnes, thank you for allowing us to come and talk with you today.
Thank you.
We won't start off just with the basics. You tell us your age and your date of birth and who your parents were.
I was born 5th of September 1917 here in Olive, and my parents was Connie Norwood and Coley Lee Nelson Norwood.
Okay, did they grow up here in the Olive community as well?
Well, here close.
Okay. Where at? Was it along the...
Daddy was born about 2 miles from here, towards Hardin,
Okay.
and Mama was over on the lake.
Okay. Now, didn't you tell me, too, that my great-granddad Gentry was the first one to hold you when you got home?
Yeah,
or
I
when
was
you was born?
about an hour old, and Daddy'd take me out on the porch to show me off, and Mr. Gentry got to hold me for a few minutes.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I was just about an hour old.
And didn't he take you to your first trip to Paducah, too?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Yeah, me and Hazel.
Yeah.
We didn't go down in town. We just at Pappy Norwood's sister. We went there, and the fire truck come flying through. Well, we never had seen a fire truck.
Yeah.
Mr. Gentry said, "Come on, you and Hazel, and we'll see where the fire's at." Well, we started down the street and never did get inside of the fire truck.
What did your dad do for a living? Was he a farmer?
Well, he was a horse trader and carried the mail,
Okay.
and he farmed a little bit, not much.
Okay, and I imagine your mother was a homemaker?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did they ever talk about how Olive was when they were growing up, what life was like then, or?
They never said much about it.
Okay.
And
So I assume that you went to school here in Olive.
I went to school here in Olive,
Okay.
and I went 7 years and didn't miss a day.
Okay.
Sick or well, I went to school.
Yeah. What was school like back then, Miss Agnes?
Well, it was a lot of fun
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
And we had to study, of course.
What were some of the subjects you all had?
We had reader and spelling, arithmetic, geography, and health.
Okay. Okay. Do you remember what the school looked like? Was it a one-room school or
It was a big room, and then it had a little room on the side and a porch to that.
Okay.
And we stayed in the little room till we went through the 4th grade, and then we went into the big room from 5 to 8 grades.
Okay. Who were some of the teachers you remember?
My first teacher was Laura Green from Hardin.
Okay.
And then I had Mayla Nanny, Connie White, and Sam Nanny, and David Inman.
Okay.
And I believe that was all that I had.
Yeah. And of course, back then in schools, that they weren't equipped with cafeterias or lunch rooms, and you
No.
all had to bring your own lunch. Or
I had to carry our own lunch,
Yeah.
wrapped up in a newspaper, or in a little bucket.
Yeah.
But I was close to the schoolhouse, and I got to go home for lunch.
Okay. Okay. You told me one time, once before, there was a time that you had brought your lunch to school, and you were ready to eat the lunch, and somebody kicked the chair up and underneath. Could you tell us that story?
Yeah, I got to carry my lunch every once in a while. And that day I had it wrapped up in a paper, sitting back in that chair. It was a teacher's chair. And I never paid no attention, but somebody gave me a push, and I went down through the schoolhouse, and my lunch went everywhere. And I had to pick it up and eat it, of course.
Yeah. There was another incident you told me too. Mr. Roy Gordon, I think he was, didn't he bring a watermelon one day?
Oh yeah, he brought a big watermelon one day and put it in the box where we'd throw our scrap paper. So he just had certain ones to eat that watermelon that day. Well, I was the one that wasn't invited, so me and some of the other girls, we made it up to chase him. So when he got his watermelon, we taken in after him, and he went around through the schoolhouse running with that big old watermelon. And when he run out on the porch, he stumped his toe and he fell down, and the watermelon kept going, and it busted out there in the yard, and we all run in and went to eating watermelon, dirt and all. And he was so mad.
Yeah.
You couldn't blame him.
But y'all got that watermelon, didn't you?
Yeah, we got the watermelon, and the ones invited, they didn't get any.
You also told me too one time they used to have movies up at the schoolhouse. They would bring community shows up there.
Had what?
Movies and.
Oh yeah. Well, strawberry time, the women and kids picked berries. Well, there was a show that would come, and they had a picture, but there wasn't no sound or anything. We could just see them moving around, and we thought that was so funny. That was a good show.
Yeah.
And then in a few years, then they got the sound to it and all, and so we enjoyed it better.
How old were you when this took place? Would this have been the 1920s or?
Yeah, I was about 8 or 9 years old.
Okay. Do you recall what the movie was?
Yeah, it's what?
Do you recall what the title of the movie was?
No, it's been so long.
Yeah. And wasn't there an incident one time where the film projector got too hot?
It got too hot and jumped off in the floor and went rolling down through there. And of course it was dark, and somebody hollered the fire. The schoolhouse will get a fire, and everybody jumped up trying to get out. Some old man grabbed somebody else's wife and was leading her around, thought he had his wife. And then when they got the light back on, well, he had somebody else's wife, and he had to hunt for his. We got into a lot of things back then.
Do you remember some of the other businesses that were in Olive at the time? I know now all we have is a couple of churches, but it used to be a booming place at one time.
Oh, it used to be a busy place back when I was small. There was 3 grocery stores. Grover Harrison, and then Monaco had a store, and then Solon Henson and Birdie, and then Ray and Vera. There was 3 stores. Well, there was Mill, where they made meal.
A grist mill?
And chicken feed and all of that stuff. And then there was a blacksmith shop, and they worked on farm things and shoed horses. And then there was a schoolhouse. Okay. And so it was a busy place back then. They'd come from over on the lake, and back then it was called a creek, Jonathan Creek, and back towards Aurora. Okay. And it was busy.
What were some of the items that you could purchase at the stores? Were they a general merchandise store? Or?
Oh, you could get a few canned goods and flour and meal and sugar and stuff like that. And they had material to make dresses, and a lot of things that they had.
Now, didn't you gather eggs up at your house and would take them up to Solon Henson's store?
Yeah, Mama would give me an egg. I wanted candy. Yeah. And I'd carry that little basket with 1 egg in it, and I'd get a sack full of candy. Yeah. And I'd just have to go down in the yard, across the road, and up a little path into the back of Solon Henson's store. Yeah. Okay. And so I carried off a lot of eggs in that little basket.
Yeah. How often? I imagine you all didn't get to go to the store that much. Mostly you grew your own food and things of that nature. Is that correct?
They had a big garden. Yeah. And then they had chicken, eggs, and then Daddy would kill 2 or 3 hogs in the fall, and we had plenty of meat. Yeah. And then he kept milk cow most of the time. If somebody come along and wanted to buy it, well, he'd sell it. And then I was out of milk, I'd get my can and go up to Aunt Lois's. She lived next door. And I'd say, well, Daddy sold a cow. I need some milk. Can you fill up my can? She'd fill up my can. Back I'd go and eat cornbread and milk.
Do you, when you were a child, I guess, you know, what was the main mode of transportation? Did people use horse and buggy? Do you remember?
Horse and buggy and wagon, and there wasn't no cars around. Nobody had a car.
Yeah.
So.
Who was the first person in this community to get a car? Do you remember?
Charlie Levitt and Bent Johnson.
Okay.
They hadn't married, and so they got them a car, and then Uncle Ben Norwood got a little one-seated car, just one extra could ride in that car.
Yeah.
I got to ride in it.
Yeah.
So that was something.
What did y'all think going from horse and buggy to seeing an automobile? I imagine that, you know, was a big transition.
Yeah, it was a big change.
Yeah.
It was a long time before Daddy got a car.
Yeah, yeah.
And he had to carry the mail in the buggy. And most time 2 horses hitched to the buggy.
Yeah. Tell me the story. You told me one time that your dad borrowed a wagon, and I think you called it a hack from Mr. Amos York.
They called it a hack. It had 2 seats in it, and it was something like a buggy, but it had 2 seats. And Mama's sister was out here, and the big singing at Benton was on that Sunday. So he went and got Amos York's hack, and we all loaded in it, and Joe was the baby, my brother, he was the baby. And we hadn't much more and got to Benton, to blackish cloud come up in the north, and people began moving around. They said, oh, there's a bad storm coming, a blizzard's coming. Oh, Daddy run and got the hack and the horses, and here he come. We loaded in, and I think he run the horses from Benton to Olive to outrun that cloud.
How often did you get to go to Benton when you were a child?
Not very often.
Not very often. Do you recall what it was like, what some of the businesses around, or?
Oh, there was a national store, I remember that, and the store's still there. I think it's on the corner of 11th Street, I believe is where it's at. Okay. National store, and Morgan's had a store, and I don't remember who else.
Okay. Did you ever get to go to Hardin very much? Did you?
Not very often.
Okay.
Daddy would carry me sometimes when he had to go over there. And so.
Wasn't it in Hardin where you got to partake in your first Coca-Cola? Tell us about that story.
That was my first bottle of orange drink. So he wanted to get me a bottle of it, and I thought, oh, that looks so good. Well, I didn't know how to drink out of a bottle, and I'd stick my tongue down in the bottle, and then when it come out, it'd pop real loud. Well, that embarrassed him, and people in the store would look at us, and he'd try to tell me how to drink. Well, next time I'd get my tongue down in the bottle, and out it'd come, pop real loud.
Yeah. Who were, you touched on some of the businesses in the county or in Olive at the time. Do you remember some of the doctors that were around in this area at the time?
Dotsons. Yeah, there was Barry Dotson and Ralph Dotson. He married my aunt. And I don't know, there's several Dotsons, but there's all down around Jonathan.
Okay. Do you remember any of the doctors that were around? Some of the physicians that would come around, like, wasn't there a Dr. Henson that was around here?
Yeah, there was a Dr. Henson that lived down towards Fair Dealing. Okay. And then Dr. Hughes was our doctor. He lived in Hardin. And then there was a Dr. Caulfield, and I think he lived in Benton.
Okay, okay. Do you remember the first radio that you ever saw or got to hear? Or
Yeah, we ordered a radio from Sears and Roebuck at Memphis, and it was 37 when that flood was on, you know, like to wash Paducah away. And we'd listen at our radio, and we could hear them talking about the flood and how high it was.
Okay. Do you recall the first radio that was in Olive? Wasn't there a lady here
That was Miss Crosby, Molly Crosby, and she had a son in Chicago working, and he sent her a radio, and it had earphones, and of the night, people around here would go up there and sit in the yard, and she'd listen to the radio and tell what was on the radio. She wouldn't let nobody touch that radio.
Do you recall what the days of the Great Depression were like? I imagine I've always heard they were rough times.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was...
Banks closed. Daddy lost some money, and the bank never did get it back.
Yeah.
And you just couldn't hardly get anything.
Yeah.
Money was scarce. There wasn't no jobs.
What after the Great Depression and World War II was concluded in 1945, they started construction, well, they completed construction on Kentucky Dam. Do you remember when that was going on and the changes that it brought, bringing electricity and things like that?
Yeah, that's when everything changed, when when they built the dam. And the president come when they got it completed, and we was close enough, we got to shake his hand.
Okay, you got
that was something big.
That'd been President Truman, wasn't it? Wasn't it Harry Truman?
I thought it was Truman. Some of them said Roosevelt, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, do you remember when electricity come out here to Olive? Do you remember when that was?
Yeah, we couldn't wait for that.
Yeah.
And we had our house warmed, and turned the lights on, and I turned every light on of the night, and then I'd get out in the yard and walk and look. I was so proud of
Yeah, I bet it made life a lot easier with electricity.
Yeah, with a little coal oil lamp.
Yeah. Do you remember when you heard of television? Tell us the story about when you first heard of television.
Well, we couldn't imagine what a television was like. And they said, oh, people, you can see them walking, stirring around and talking. And we just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But we finally got a television in 1950.
Okay. When, let's back up a little bit and tell us, when did you get married and who did you marry?
I married September the 30th, 1933 to Louis Nimmo.
Okay.
And we met in church.
Okay. Over here at the Baptist church?
At the Baptist church.
Okay. Do you recall, they used to say that the Baptist and the Methodist church used to share the same building. Do you remember those days?
I don't remember that. I remember hearing them talk about it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Who are some of the preachers that you remember that preached over at the Baptist church?
Dr. Goff and Dr. Carlin was the first ones I remember. That's the first ones in the Baptist church. And then there was different ones, Brother Waters, Brother Shelton, and I don't know, Perkins, Summers. There's a whole bunch of preachers.
Yeah. Do you remember, church must have been a lot different back then. Do you recall the brush arbor meetings or any of those? Did you ever take part in any of them where they would have the big revivals outside? And
yeah, they had the revivals back then 2 weeks at a time. And then the preachers, they'd meet them maybe in Hardin or Benton, and they'd come out here and stay with them. Different ones, the 2 weeks till revival was over.
Okay. So that's where you met your husband, was in church.
And
did he grow up here in the Olive community as well?
Yeah, here close.
Okay.
Down close to Fair Dealing.
Okay. Who was his parents?
His parents? John Nimmo and Lila Tubbs Nimmo.
Okay. Were they farmers as well?
Yeah, they farmed.
Okay. Is that what Louis did when y'all got married?
Yeah, but he was working for Mr. Ed Lovett.
Okay.
And he'd go to work at sun up till sundown and made 50 cents a day.
Man.
50 cents, can you
That's
imagine
something.
that?
You can't buy anything with 50 cents now.
No.
Not much.
But after we married, we saved money, him making 50 cents a day.
Yeah.
And then he went to driving a peddling truck for Ray Harrison. And I don't know how long he'd worked, but they raised him to 75 cents, and we thought that was a big raise.
Yeah. And didn't he go after that? Didn't he work for West Kentucky Rural Electric?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he worked there 25 years.
Okay. Okay. We talked about when the Kentucky Dam come and jobs started coming to this area, and what are some of what would you consider the biggest change to come to Marshall County since you were born almost a century ago?
Oh, that dam. Yeah, people went to working, and then they helped clear where it's all flooded. They had to clear all of that, and they hired a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so that's when everything started up.
Yeah.
It was really bad before that.
Okay. And Mr. Luther Draffin was very instrumental in getting that dam here. Did you know Mr. Draffin or know of him?
No, but I've seen his picture a lot and read a lot about him.
Okay.
And so he is one of the main ones.
Okay. There's been several, we were talking not too long ago about several interesting characters that used to live here in Olive, and one of them you and I were talking about was Taterbug Hartley. Can you tell me that story about Taterbug?
Oh, Taterbug?
Yeah.
Well, he wore a big old overcoat with pockets in it, and he had his pockets full of whiskey. And then he'd go to the trade days and he'd sell his whiskey. So there's two boys at Hardin, and they found a sugar sack and they filled it full of sand. Well, they traded that sack to Taterbug for some whiskey. Then he packed that bag of sand all day thinking he had him a bag of sugar. So I guess he was mad when he got
upset
home.
when he got home. Do you remember Pup Brown? A lot of people used to talk
I've
about
heard
Pup.
talk of him, but
Yeah.
I didn't know him.
You didn't know Pup. And what about Rupert Town? He was another interesting character around here.
I heard a lot about him, but I never did see him. I don't remember him.
Diana and I were talking, and we were talking about the time when you were a young girl and your grandparents made, what was it, homemade?
Homemade beer?
Yes, yeah.
They called it beer. I don't know what it was, but it looked like white seed, about, not as big as a marble. And my grandmother would make that up some way, I don't know how, and put it in a big kettle, and then she'd set it on the back porch on a shelf, and the sun would shine in it. And then at dinner, that was the best drink. Me and Magdalene, Mama's youngest sister, we'd get out and play. Well, then we'd slip in on the back porch and we'd drink beer. And we'd take the dipper and get the water bucket and get her some water and pour in there. Well, we'd go back and play. Then we'd come back and drink more beer. Well, when they went to eat lunch, they began saying, well, what's wrong with the beer? This ain't good. I don't want this. We just eat on. We didn't let on that we had watered it down till it wasn't nothing.
That's a good story.
We didn't tell it either.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't let them know. You probably got a whipping, wouldn't you?
We just went ahead with our eating.
Well, Miss Agnes, that is all I have. Is there anything else you'd like to add or tell? Or
No, I can't think of it.
Okay.
I think I've told it all.
There you go. Well, we appreciate you sitting down with us, and you've really told us some great stories. We appreciate that.
Well, I've enjoyed it.
Well, thank you very much.